The best way that you can get noticed, that you can stand out, is to go against the status quo, go against the ordinary, taking a risk that an established Fortune 500 publicly traded brand might not be willing to take.
Today's guest doesn't believe in bloated marketing plans, extensive complexity, or even strategies that look good but never got executed. Alex Stonehouse is the founder and marketing strategist at Brilliantly Wrong. And over his past 15 plus years, he's helped early stage startups get those marketing foundations to actually drive traction. He not only works with founders, but also lean marketing teams to help sharpen their go-to-market strategies and functions and really move with cultural shifts and not against them. You don't need a 50-page deck. You don't need a team of 10. You just need sharp, executable strategies that work in the real world. Alex is also the host of the Brilliantly Wrong podcast, where he digs into the art of science of marketing, startup growth, and creativity, where people are taking brilliantly wrong risks that have great outcomes. And he's not afraid to call out BS stuff that might slow down that founder or that company from taking its next step. So if you've ever felt like marketing advice sounds great in theory, but it never actually works, this episode's for you. Okay, Alex, so now that you're here and we're talking about go-to-markets and startups and early seeds, what is the one thing that every seed stage founder thinks they need in marketing, but actually doesn't matter at all?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say it doesn't matter at all, but a lot of founders early on, they want to see a lot of reach. They want to see a lot of sales leads coming in the door. And those things matter, and they matter a lot eventually. But in the early days, the biggest thing that they can focus on is building trust. That's trust with the brand. That's trust with the few customers who are actually using your product. Trust with the founder themselves, who are going to be a big part of the brand in the early days. So the more you can be authentic, focus on trust, the better you're going to be. And don't worry so much about, are we reaching 100,000 people across X, Y, and Z digital campaigns? It's like, be authentic, build the trust, be consistent.
So what does the laying of the foundation of growth or even trust actually mean for a startup? How do you even start to have that conversation, especially with the first-time founder?
Yeah, for me, especially if you start looking at the kind of pre-seed, seed, even stealth startups who are really trying to get that foundation early, there's some stuff marketers are going to have to do behind the scenes, where it's setting up the MarTech, their little mini stack, maybe you're getting HubSpot set up, MailChimp, those kind of things.
Yep.
So there's all this kind of logistical stuff that goes on. But when it comes to like, what are you actually focused on? What are you actually doing? It's getting out there and putting your stake in the ground about like why you're starting the company, what you believe in as a company, as a founder, as a brand, and then building everything around that. There's definitely times where you might be at a pre-seed company. It doesn't make sense to be spending money on paid digital advertising yet. It doesn't make sense to have a booth at a trade show yet. You're still trying to get product market fit. You're still trying to figure out your ICP. You're doing all these things. But your founder should still be out there doing speeches on the topic that is relevant to your brand, that you should still be having an opinion, writing articles, doing all these things to get the ecosystem and thought leadership environment going for your brand, for your company, so that when you're ready to like, all right, we want to spend some money, we want to turn it on, you can really put some gas on the fire, for lack of a better term, and like push. Yeah. What a lot of companies do is they dabble in performance marketing. They kind of go back and forth. Are we building a brand? Are we doing performance? And then they get to this point a year and a half in where they're like, oh, we wish we had done more brand early on, or why is the traction not really? It's because they're trying to do too many things at once. So lead with the thought leadership, establish the brand, establish the core beliefs early. That'll translate into the performance marketing, and then it'll just go on from there.
To even take a step back further, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about that thought leadership piece and the importance of establishing your thoughts on whatever your company is doing, right? And establishing yourself as an executive visibility thought leader. What is something that most founders or early stage founders get wrong when starting to do thought leadership or starting to even think about, hey, here's who I am and here's what I care about?
Yeah, I think the big thing that I see a lot is they're always trying to think of something new to say every single time they post or open their mouth. So they say something one time, they think, all right, I burnt that topic, let me move on to something else. And then they keep doing that. And what happens is you get a little bit of a telephone game where if you do that 20 times, all of a sudden you're saying something that isn't your core message anymore. So the best thing to do is early on establish 3 or 4 things that are your core pillars, the core things you want to be talking about. You can rotate through those so it doesn't seem like everything you're saying is always the same. but you want to be iterating on those things over and over, because only, to use a platform like LinkedIn, like 10 to 15% of your audience is going to see a post. That means you can do 8 posts on the same topic to finally reach 100% of your audience. So you want to be, by the time people are really, it's sinking in that what you're saying and it's resonating with them, you should actually be kind of sick of what you're talking about. So don't get off the plan. Like, stick to the plan, establish what you want to say early, and then be very thoughtful about what you want to say. So like, it should align with your own values, the company's values. Like, it should all go and move in the direction of, if this works out, if people listen to what I am saying, it should push you on the path where you want to go. So it should have a meaning behind it, but it should be consistent along the way.
And I think you hit something that's so important is you shouldn't just say one thing and be done with it, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the age of AI where everything, not even everyone, everything is talking about one concept. You have to keep reiterating why your stance is important and makes you different. When we think about founders, right, we're putting those founders hat on. How should those founders approach go to market differently at a stealth versus seed versus Series A? Like, can you talk me through a little bit about where your thoughts and your expertise is for those different stages?
The way that I always think about it is to focus by starting on 4 main things at the very beginning. It's brand, position, market, and story. Marketing is moving in this way where brand is having a resurgence. So brand marketers are loving the time period right now. Like, performance marketing without brand marketing is a tough spot to be in.
Exactly.
And a lot of companies get themselves into a position where they wish they had started earlier. So brand is very important. Position is just understanding where that brand fits into compared to your competitors. There's a lot of research and things that go into that. Then market is understanding the overall market. So identifying maybe there's some blue ocean somewhere, understanding the total money that's out there, understanding what investors might be caring about, all those different things. And then story is putting it all together in, all right, how are we actually relaying this message out into the world? So it comes into building out your messaging house, doing all these different things. That can all be done basically by the marketing team, leadership team, all that. But then that gets turned into all of the sales enablement materials, into the website, all of these things that get pushed out as the broader kind of go-to-market team, as you could think about it. So like hiring a sales team and bringing in a CRO and having multiple AEs and doing all that stuff, it's very difficult for them, and like really honestly unfair to them if you don't have those things that I just mentioned in place.
Yeah.
So if you're early on, that's the best thing you can do, and you can scale to a certain level with literally like one marketer, one account executive, or one lead sales rep, and kind of grow from there. And I've even seen companies do it where they have those people start off working part-time, or they have a team where it's like their main full-time marketer is someone who's 23 years old, they're right out of college, entry level, and then they have a fractional leader come in for 10 hours a week or something. So you're getting a touch of expertise, you're getting someone who can spend a lot of time building things.
I mean to shamelessly plug the Startup Marketer here, but that's exactly
please.
what we tried to do here, right? Is to gather all of those marketers in one room and help not only them understand what's next for them, but then also speaking to founders of, especially these first time founders, of what is marketing, how does it execute, and especially even talking about this go to market, right? I want to even take a step further back. In your words, how would you describe go to market in 2 sentences?
People use go to market to be like the team that they're talking about internally. So it's sales, product, and marketing combined. Then there's the go to market strategy, which is like, how are we showing up in the market? When we're talking in this context, I like to think about it as, how are we showing up in the market? What is someone's experience with us? And what do they have to go through to learn about us, understand what we do, and buy from us? That typically involves a combination of marketing and sales together. So it's all the way from the first time they hear about you at the top of the funnel, all the way down to we're booking the meeting, we're booking the second meeting, we're closing the deal, all that, and becoming a customer. That then gets handed off to customer success and all that beyond there. But I think of it as, what is your entire life cycle like? That to me is the go-to-market function.
You're right? Like, people think of it as a function of a company. People think of it as a strategy of a company. So it's really different. It's really, really important to establish, I think, not only in general what go-to-market is, but what is your go-to-market, especially for these startup marketers who have very lean teams. And like, with that, what advice or thoughts do you have to, let's say, a new head of marketer that just came into an early stage startup, and their founder's like, all right, what's our go to market? What is that first kind of advice or thoughts look like from you?
It's funny because I actually enjoy the creative side of marketing more personally, but my instinct in that situation and what I usually do is actually go look at the data on the back end to
Mhm.
understand what's actually been happening so far. Like, where do we stand today? What's the state of the state? How many customers have we brought in over the last year? What's the conversion percentage at all the different levels of the funnel? What's our churn rate? What are all these different things to understand what's actually going on? Because you need the benchmarks to be able to know if you're doing things better or doing things worse from there. Almost always you will find there is a spot in the funnel where things break. So it'll be, all right, we have 50% conversion from our lead gen form to the first meeting. Then we have another 40% conversion from first meeting to second. And then we have a drop off where we only get 5% to go to the third. What's happening there? How do we
Yeah.
fix that? And a lot of marketers will think, oh, that's not really my role. That's a sales thing or that's whatever. The best GTM functions do well when it's the sales leader and the marketing leader working together on that together.
Yep.
Very early stage, it's oftentimes going to be you and the founder because they're out in the field selling, doing all that stuff. So it's realizing that part of your role in these early stages is to deliver on all of the creative stuff that marketers love, but also don't be afraid to be like, hey, I think there's a problem here and I'm willing to step in and help think about how we can solve it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to be the one starting to go to sales meetings and you become the CRO. It's just, I'm seeing an issue. We all get more money if this company goes public in 5 years. So let's all help solve this thing now. Like that's the mentality I think you should have early.
You've previously said something that I wanted to circle back to of like you're seeing this marketing shift happen, especially with this brand versus performance and things like that. And that's not the only part of marketing that's really changing.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about moving, moving with culture and reading the room and being a part of those conversations, how do early stage marketers and founders develop this skill to keep those conversations going?
I think moving with the culture and moving with the market are two different things. But I think it's more like understanding how people in your industry are going to be working in 2026, 2027. Like how are things shifting for the people who are in your ideal customer profile, who are in your kind of buyer zone of people who you want to be selling to. So it's understanding trends in that sense and then doing it in a way that is reaching people where they are, where they want to receive information. And so that's where trends shift as well. So a Facebook that might have been the place to be advertising in 2018, not that you can't still make a lot of progress there in 2025, but there's like the groups and demographics of who's actually there and how they're spending their time shift. So there's always new platforms emerging, new things going on. And I like to be the type of marketer who's like, let's do the beta test. Let's try to get in the first group of people, understand how these platforms are working. It builds trust with your clients or with your internal stakeholders to be like, hey, we're one of the first people to ever advertise on Reddit or ever advertise on these platforms. So you get some like kind of street cred there. But the other benefit is these different platforms, they want their technology and their ad platforms to work and take off. So you get really incredible deals if you're an early adopter on these ad platforms. Like if you were in the first wave of Reddit advertisers, even still now, like it's incredibly affordable compared to LinkedIn and some of the other platforms. So just be out there looking what's going on, try to get ahead of it. And the more you can time it to be, hey, like we're releasing the guide about XYZ topic as that thing is starting to get popular, that's how you want to try and time it. You don't want to be like, hey, something's trending on LinkedIn. Let's spend 6 months to make a guide. By the time you make the guide, it's already been solved. Nobody cares anymore. Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to ask you the $1 million question, right? That I think every marketer struggles with. How do you stay up to date with all of the new culture trends and the new things that are taking over, aka Reddit advertising? Like, how do you get that information or stay up to date on that information besides joining the startup marketer community?
Yes, definitely do that. I mean, part of it is talking to other marketers, especially in our roles. One of the things that is tough when you're a marketer at a startup is oftentimes a lot of the other people in the role with you will be, or not in the role, but in the company with you, will be technical people, engineers, like software design, like the people who have nothing to do with marketing,
Yeah.
and they're awesome to work with, but they're not always the best at being like, hey, I'm toying with this idea. What do you think this would work for a campaign? What like they're even if they have good ideas, usually they're like, can you leave me alone? I was like really focused, and now you're killing my vibe. So to have other marketers to just be, hey, sanity test, can I bounce this off of, is like that is incredibly helpful. It's really great too to have people who are at your level, above your level, and below your level. So if you're a marketing director, being able to ping an idea off a CMO is incredibly valuable, but also being able to ping out an idea of somebody who's 20 years old is really valuable to understand all right, am I actually tapping into something I think is cool here? Like, is this going to resonate with people, especially consumer products that have younger buyer bases?
I love following you on LinkedIn because I think you're so
Oh, thank you.
funny
Thank you.
with the ways that you do things, but you're very into the culture, very in tune with what's going on. And I know one of the big things that you do is run your podcast,
Yeah.
Brilliantly Wrong. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Why does this podcast important to you? Why do you have this?
Well, it's funny because I originally started it back in 2024 because I worked for a really amazing CMO, and she left the company that I was working at, and I went to a trade show like maybe 3 weeks later after she had left, and everybody at the show was like, "Hey, where'd she go? Where is she at? Where did she go?" And nobody was like, "Hey, good to see you." Like
Yeah.
nobody, not that I was doing a good job, but I was not doing it publicly or
Yeah.
sharing my thoughts and being out there. But then the brilliantly wrong concept actually came out of a conversation that I was having about folk art or kind of self-taught American art. If you look at somebody who can paint like photorealistic images of it looks almost like a photograph, they're amazing, their skill is tremendous, but the topic that they're painting about is boring. It's not interesting or good art. It's the kind of thing you can buy at the mall in a kiosk for 19.99. It's like
Exactly.
it's incredibly skilled but not interesting and therefore not that valuable. Then there's these artists who are a little more like kind of crude and something may be off about it. They're self-taught, they didn't go to art school, and it's like I don't know what's going on here. I can't really figure out what they were trying to do here, but there's something special about the work and it's amazing and therefore it's very interesting and really valuable. And the literally the phrase brilliantly wrong came from a conversation about that. We were trying to pinpoint like what's going on with this amazing piece of art we're looking at,
Hmm.
and the phrase there's just something off, and it's like it's brilliant, but it's brilliantly wrong. Like the wrong thing is the thing that makes it work. And then I took that and applied it to the startup world because as a startup, you're like the small fish typically. You don't have as much money as an incumbent, or you're trying to create a new category. You're trying to do all these different things that are very difficult, and you're starting typically at a disadvantage when it comes to resources.
Yep.
So the best way that you can get noticed, that you can stand out, is to go against the status quo, go against the ordinary, do things that may feel a little bit risky, taking a risk that an established Fortune 500 publicly traded brand might not be willing to take. You should take advantage of the fact that you're small, nimble, can iterate, and that if you try something really risky and it blows up, like almost no one's going to notice. So now is the time to do it. Now is the time to figure out what's resonating with people. Because when you are $100 million company, you can't do the same risk. And because if it blows up, you're in actual
You're
trouble.
done.
So like that's sort of what we're trying to embrace.
Yeah.
And it's founders who are understanding that they have to do that in
Hmm.
order to get noticed. So they like if you're a startup and your competitor is outspending you by 50 times, playing it safe and trying to copy their playbook just isn't going to work because you're going to be behind them in terms of time. You're going to be behind them in terms of resources. But it doesn't mean you can't win and you can't steal a chunk of their market share if you do things in a little more interesting and innovative way.
How do you know when to embrace being, quote, this brilliantly wrong versus just being outright reckless and just not, taking a risk that was, not really worth it?
Yeah.
So how do you balance that? What's that line that you tell?
I honestly tend to do a classic kind of cost benefit analysis where it's
Yeah.
like, all right, here's a fun idea, here's a cool campaign we could do, whatever, or here's an interesting way we could spend our $10,000 budget, our $50,000 budget. What is literally the worst case thing that could happen from this? What is the best case thing that could happen? Usually, best case is like a bunch of people learn about us, we grow X amount, we get some new customers. Worst case is typically actually just like we waste the money that we were spending and it doesn't work, is typically the
Yeah.
worst case. But occasionally there's situations where it's like, no, there could actually be brand damage, reputational damage, legal problems, and that's where we don't do it. My favorite example of that is I had from years ago before I started my own company was I was working for a company that was in the defense and national security space in the publishing world. We sponsored events like the Marine Corps Marathon, and we went to all the big kind of like national security and defense events. We were trying to think of new ideas, think of new ways to generate money, make a splash at some of these big conferences. And there's one in DC called AUSA, which is the Army's big military conference. So there's generals, there's all these high level Army people in town. My idea was to dress in one of those like skin tight bodysuits with our logo on it, and I was gonna rollerblade around AUSA in the convention center, handing out like printed versions of our publication. But I was like, I'll go cruise around. Everybody will be like, who the hell's that guy? What's going on? And we'll make a big splash. And I still remember to this day, our CEO was like, Alex, I got to tell you, that's one of like the most interesting, innovative ideas anyone's ever brought to one of these meetings. There's no chance in hell you are showing up to the Army conference in a bodysuit and rollerblading around. Like, there's just no, because the risk was everybody thinks we're a joke. They write us off. Nobody wants to do business with us. They blacklist us from ever, like the actual downside was way bigger than the upside, even though I thought it was a fun idea. And that's sort of where it's at. It's like, all right, what could actually go wrong? Could this actually hurt the brand? And you never want to do anything that hurts the brand.
I want to move into our next little segment, Would You Rather. First one is, would you rather kill your brand messaging or kill your go-to-market strategy?
I'm killing go-to-market strategy only because I think that is difficult without the brand messaging piece of it. In theory, people could do the if we build it, they will come part and find your brand. And you could still get traction in other ways, but it's a tough, ideally you have both, but yeah.
Would you rather sacrifice speed to market, right, to get your positioning perfect, or sacrifice positioning clarity to beat your competitors to market by 6 months or so?
Speed right now is more important than almost anything when you're working with these startups, whether you're consulting with them, in-house, whatever it is. They are willing to do a lot of things and take some risks if you're willing to do it fast and you're willing to iterate and you're willing to learn as you go. I think what most of them can't do is like, hey, let's get 6 months to make this perfect. They're like, let's do it now, and if it's not perfect, we'll do it again in 6 months. We'd rather just do it and do it again than wait.
Would you, rather build a startup marketing function that moves fast but breaks things through on the way, or one that moves slows but never really makes that mistake, and they're they're always, quote, doing the right thing?
I'm gonna go move fast, and the reason I say that is that I think even when you go slow, you're gonna make some mistake. Like, you're gonna have somebody who hits the fat fingers a button and sends the email too early. You're gonna have somebody who messes up a calculation in a spreadsheet, even though they looked at it 10 times and it's your cost benefit analysis was off. Stuff like that's going to happen no matter if you're going fast or not. So you're better off going fast, understanding there will be a little bit of breakage in there, kind of building that into how you operate. And then having checks and balances and backup plans to do that. So something as simple as like, all right, we have a checklist for when we send out an email, or we have 2 eyes on everything that we do so that nothing goes out without 2 people saying it's okay. Just little things like that can protect you from some of the more common mistakes of typos or missing links and things like that.
I feel like every marketer makes mistakes, no matter 10 years into it or 100 years into their
The goal is to make mistakes that you're embarrassed by but aren't a big deal. Not the kind of mistakes where you have to send the apology email afterwards and be like, we can't believe, we're so sorry, please forgive us. That sucks.
What is your one big takeaway that you want everybody listening to this episode to remember?
For me, it's to just, in your whatever marketing role you're in, remember to actually just be you, be yourself, and make it so that you're working in a way that moves the brand forward, but in a way that you want to do it. It feels authentic to you, that you actually believe in. There's a lot of people who operate in a way where they think they need to be this ideal CMO or this ideal leader. They need to dress a certain way. They need to do these certain things. And maybe if you want to get the job that's the marketing person at JP Morgan or something, you do have to do that. But for a lot of us, the way we're operating, you're actually better off really just being you, your whole self, every single day, bringing that creativity, the speed, the excitement, and then rolling that into the story about how you tell the story about yourself, your brand, your founder, all these different things, rolling it all up into one. So you're going to be much happier, and you're actually going to get better results if you stick to who you are rather than trying to be someone you're not.
You are right, especially as a marketer. Like, you have to be yourself, because if you're not being yourself, you're not being the best you can for, the company that you're working for. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody, we will see you in 2 weeks with our next guest. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.